around with a nature encyclopedia in your hand. So it's real valuable. Let me make a little change there. It's incredibly valuable for learning, but then also for conservation efforts potentially. The way our program works, we reach out, as I mentioned, to the naturalist community, the community science world, using iNaturalist as a tool to engage them in the natural world. And then hopefully that data, some of that data that comes in through iNaturalist, we can then take and move on to the research and conservation community. As I like to tell people, it's hard to make good decisions when you don't have all the information. Doesn't matter whether it's conservation or how to make a cake. But most importantly, besides not the cake, the conservation of our natural resources is so critical and becoming more so every day. So our ultimate goal is to get that high quality, robust data into what's called the Texas Natural Diversity Database. This is a database maintained by TPWD, so that when people are looking for where the locations of rare and endangered species are, for if they're going to develop some land or put in a new road, whatever it happens to be, they can go and look at this database to find out what they need to be aware of and possibly mitigate for throughout the process. We do that with 12 different projects that we have within our Texas Nature Trackers program. Everything from tracking herps of Texas, all the way through Texas eagle nests and the whooping crane, rare plants, bees and wasps, even milkweeds across the state of Texas are some of our projects. So just real quickly, we do have our own web page. There are 3 tabs you see there across the lower third. Projects, those are our 12 projects that we have. We have target species that you can go and look for, and then a tab to get involved, which includes City Nature Challenge. So these are our 12 projects, as I mentioned. There's the Milkweeds Project, Rare Plants of Texas project. And for example, if that second tab, the target species, you can actually go and search for what species might be in the San Antonio area or wherever you live around the state of Texas. You can browse by taxonomic group. You can browse and you get a list of what species are of concern. And then you can also browse by ecoregion. Of course, San Antonio, Bexar County falls, I think, within 3 ecosystems. So there's lots of checking to do there. So iNaturalist itself is not something that Texas Parks and Wildlife created. This was created by graduate students out in California. It's now hosted by a couple of other agencies out in California. But it was created as an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. So this view iNaturalist as a large naturalist community, people that are professional, people that are amateur, people that are just getting started, all levels are welcome to iNaturalist. And of course, their 2 primary goals were to connect people to nature and then also to generate scientifically valuable data. Basically how it works, hopefully everybody that's on this call knows how it works, so I'm not going to go into great detail, but basically you download the app, you create an account, you go out and you start taking pictures of things. And now, of course, you can do sounds as well. We'll review that very briefly tonight because those are some new things. If you haven't used iNaturalist in a while, you may not be aware of some of the changes that have taken place in the last several months. But iNaturalist, take a picture of something, you share it out with fellow iNaturalist users, discuss findings. They can help you identify things. iNaturalist, the artificial intelligence, the AI, actually will help you suggest IDs, will help suggest IDs for you to help along with that process as well when it can. So currently, this was as of today, there have been 93 million, almost 94 million observations globally in iNaturalist, and that's a tremendous amount of potential data there from across the globe. In Texas, we're approaching 6 million observations, and so you can imagine that if that much information is out there now, a lot of it may be cardinals, it may be white-tailed deer, but there's a tremendous amount of valuable information out there on species that aren't as common as those. And it would be foolish of Texas Parks and Wildlife not to rely on some of this data to help us with our conservation efforts in terms of figuring out where species are and then be able to make better determinations on their status and conservation needs. So that's kind of an overview of both of those, the TNT program and iNaturalist on a kind of a global scale, if you will. I want to talk a little bit about City Nature Challenge. This is a big event. It was initiated in 2016 as a friendly competition. It's now grown into over 400 cities across the globe that participate in this. It's organized by the California Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. And so they house all of this and make it happen. This year, normally it's kind of a friendly competition between cities all over the world, and it really is going to be again. However, the official kind of line is that it's going to be less of a competition and just a way to get people out exploring nature as we come out of this COVID, last 2 years of COVID. So, but there are communities, all kinds of people that have it as a friendly competition. And that's okay. It consists of 4 days of documenting the natural world, followed by 6 days of identifying those observations. Last year, just to kind of give you an idea, more than 1.2 million observations were made in the 4-day period of 45,300 species by more than 52,000 people globally. So that's a lot of involvement across the globe. And considering COVID is going on, and every country is different in its ability to participate, of course. I want to review last year, just kind of show you where we have been and where we hope to go. Last year, we had 78 counties participating. That's about 30% of Texas counties. That has actually increased this year, and we'll get to that in a little bit. You can see that we cover several large parts of the state, and we're still missing a few holes. We've got a few holes here and here. I was out in Midland, Odessa area this past weekend doing a workshop in BioBlitz with iNaturalist with the Llano Estacado Master Naturalist chapter, and they have expressed interest in participating in it next year. So we'll see if we can add them to the fun and the fun of this event. So last year for City Nature Challenge, this is the web page that shows the results. We had over 15,000 observations, 2,100 plus species. We had 765 observers. That's a lot of work by 765 people. And I believe San Antonio's got a few more than the metro area than 765 people. So we think we could easily double this, if not do that many more times with some advertising and with some interest in getting folks to get outside and explore nature over that 4-day period. The bottom thing is kind of gives you a summary of where we stood last year. So whoever Black and Blue SA1 actually had more observations than anyone, and also the most species with Peter Hernandez following second. I stumbled onto the crew. It wasn't as good a year last year for me as it was 2 years ago. Just busy, I guess. And the most common observation was a rain lily. Wouldn't it be nice to have a lot of rain lily in a few weeks because we actually got some rain? That would be kind of neat. And you can see the cardinal was the third leading critter, and then Mexican hat was the second. Here's the antelope horn milkweed. So some really good observations were made during last year's event. I apologize, I need to drink a little. So just to kind of give you a summary, this is a report that my colleague Tanya prepares each year at the end of the event. To give you kind of summarize what we had. Last year, we had 9 counties. We've already talked about the number of observations and all of that. And just to kind of show you where we rank in the top 3 to 4% globally in the number of observations, species, observers, and identifiers. So San Antonio is right up there. In Texas, San Antonio ranked 3rd in species, 3rd in observers, and 4th in observations. So we are still working our way up ever so slowly. And my goal for us this year is to get past Austin in terms of numbers of observations, so we can truly own 3rd place, and then start working on the mountain, the rest of the mountain that includes Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Houston area. So anyway, it's a great event. We collected a lot of data last year. Here's the kind of the overall for all cities or all metro areas that participated. Last year, you can see here San Antonio in 4th place. We did very, very well. And considering we've been in COVID the last 2 years, that's what's really surprising, is how many people have actually discovered they have nature around them. COVID, that's probably maybe the only good thing that's come out of COVID that I can think of, is that people rediscovered the natural world around their homes, regardless of whether they were in an apartment or a house, it didn't matter. nature was all around them. And the wildlife, with us not traveling, the wildlife responded to that newfound freedom as well. So a few more things here. The species, we talk about having things at research grade. I'll explain that in just a moment. We also talk about looking for greatest species of greatest conservation need, because those are the species that are really in need of help. And so the more observations we get of those, it gives us a better understanding of the range, where they're currently occurring, and whether we need to take additional steps to protect them. The goal being that if we can identify those species of greatest conservation need now, figure out what they need, perhaps we can reverse their downward trends so that they don't have to be listed as threatened or endangered species. So that's what we in our program are focused on, looking for those species as a result of the City Nature Challenge. Just to kind of give you an idea, statewide, 56% of all observations reached what is known as research grade, and research grade data are high quality, necessary for that natural diversity database I mentioned a moment ago. And just to kind of tell you what research grade is, and not everything becomes research grade for various reasons. So that should not be your ultimate goal. I mean, I guess it could be, but that would mean you'd have to take some phenomenal pictures of everything you encounter. You would have to have pictures under a microscope for certain things because they're so small and so difficult to identify. So even though that can be the goal, I don't think anybody probably ever reaches that, simply because nature is nature, and there's a lot of variation out there. But our goal for observations is to have them positively identified by more than one person. So an observation that becomes research grade has received at least 2/3 agreement on the identification. So here in this example of these pallid bats, you can see that I suggested an ID was the pallid bat. 2 other people agreed. That reached the 2/3 threshold, and as a result, it was listed as research grade. And when it becomes research grade, and that's what we're looking for in our program, we have master naturalists that help us with curation of our individual projects, focusing on individual SGCN. And they're looking for those observations that are research grade, that are trusted observations, so that we can then move those on up into the Texas Natural Diversity Database. And then just to kind of give you an idea of the species greatest conservation need that were found in the San Antonio area last year, represented 29 species of birds, a couple of species of reptiles, 1 of amphibians, 1 fish, 3 arthropods, and 8 plant species. And that's pretty darn good in a big metropolitan area with not a ton of people out looking. We want to get more people out looking so we can find more species potentially. But we found some very, very valuable ones, from sycamore leaf snowbell to the Strecker's chorus frog. What a great animal. To our plateau milk vine, which is endemic in our part of the state. So lots and lots of good finds there. And of course, a lot of different kinds of birds are also considered to be species of greatest conservation need, as so many of them are declining in population. So of that, for a statewide effort, we had over 2,600 research grade observations of 131 SGCNs. That's pretty good. Now, just to give you an idea, there are about 1,300 SGCNs in Texas. So this is about 10%. So, but that 10% is better than if we hadn't held this event and people weren't out looking for them. So that's a great a bit of data that we're able to collect on those particular species. And beyond the SGCNs, the species of greatest conservation need, there are all kinds of cool findings. These are just a few examples in the San Antonio area. Interestingly enough, there were 5 observations of this little wildflower called Swan Flower, which happens to be a primary host for the pipevine swallowtail. Notice there were 93 observations of those. It actually takes about 25 of these plants to feed 1 caterpillar, according to research of the pipevine swallowtail. So there's a whole lot more of this out there in order to have that number of observations of that butterfly. And then of course we have the milkweed, the antelope horn, lots of observations, and with a not quite as many observations, but a fair number of observations of the monarch, of which of course it lays its eggs on milkweed plants. And then we go from the really beautiful, like the painted bunting with lots of observations, what a gorgeous bird, isn't it? To the western rat snake, which may not be the friends of everybody. And we even had a few observations of our most common bat, the Mexican free-tailed bat. Kind of hard to document them, even though I should say, that leads me to let you know that when we start the City Nature Challenge, it begins at 12 o'clock 01 with 1 second all the way through midnight of Monday night. So you can be out at night recording and documenting bats and other nocturnal creatures, including moths around streetlights, things like that. And then of course we had the toad. Probably one of our most common toads around us is the Gulf Coast toad. We have lots of observations of that. And then one of the best wildflowers for pollinators in the area, the mealy blue sage, obviously was blooming at that time of the year as well. So just to give you an idea of the range of things that were found out there during the City Nature Challenge last year. So last year's numbers compared to 2020 numbers, there was a statewide increase of just 1% relative to 2020, but observations increased by nearly 30%. So this is clearly an event that can continue to grow, will continue to grow. And I challenge every one of you in this meeting tonight to get out and make at least 10 observations, quality observations of your own. And I think the last number I saw was 46 people, and not including myself. If we all made that, that's 460 observations right there. So I encourage you to get out and do this for the City Nature Challenge during that 4-day window. But then also, being master naturalists, it's a great opportunity to learn more about the flora and fauna of the Alamo area. And one of the cool things that we've discovered through some research is that the City Nature Challenge often catalyzes a deeper sustained engagement. So some people that get engaged with City Nature Challenge, they get hooked on iNaturalist. A great example of that is the gentleman that we saw at the beginning of the meeting, Peter. But it is really a valuable tool to get more people engaged. And we see more engagement. We've got evidence of that by numbers, more observations, more identifications, to the point where some of those people, an elite few, are able to teach iNaturalist workshops for themselves. So, and that includes your fellow master naturalist, Peter Hernandez, who does a wonderful job with it. Another thing that this event does is it actually magnifies the work of TPW biologists. We figured out, this was Tanya put this together a couple of years ago, or last year, I guess. So every county in Texas, with the exception of urban counties where there might be a urban biologist, or two in the case of Bexar County area, she calculated that for every biologist in the Houston-Galveston area back in 2020, 84 community scientists were leveraged with that one biologist. So you can see that the general public, the community scientists out there, can provide a tremendous amount of aid and help and information for conservation in the state of Texas. One biologist per county can't pull off what all of these folks, all of you folks, can do during an event like this. Another thing that we find out is that a lot of times cities have parks, small areas. They may not have very good numbers in terms of how many people are visiting this little piece of land. So the value of it may not be as much realized from the public use standpoint until, as in the case up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where the urban biologists up there pointed out the iNaturalist observations in these small parks. And the city parks people had no idea how many people were using these parks and collecting valuable data for them and helping to justify the fact that those green spaces existed, and can also then enhance their management objectives of acquiring more land, doing restoration projects, things like that. So this kind of effort can have a tremendous long range and very impactful positive consequences for conservation at the local level. So let's talk 2022. Texas City Nature Challenge is firing up here in a couple of weeks. We have added East Texas, the Tyler area as a new metropolitan area. We've now grown this to 93 counties participating, which is a little over 36% of all counties across Texas. We still would like to get Del Rio. I think I heard something about Eagle Pass was trying to organize something. If we can get Midland, Odessa, we would really be covering large parts of the state. So we're very excited to have this. 2 years ago, we were at 8 metropolitan areas. So this event continues to grow, and we're very, very pleased with that. So I'm going to give you this picture again at the end of the presentation, but do make plans to participate in the City Nature Challenge. It's going to be from Friday, April 29th through all day Monday and into midnight, May 2nd. And then equally important, almost equally as important, I think it's equally important, is then the next several days from May 3rd to May 8th, there's the opportunity for people to sit down and help with the identification of all of those observations. So the more people we have identifying things to species level, the more information we get, potentially for SGCN, potentially for conservation across the state of Texas. So if you have a skill level, let's say you're into butterflies or you're into birds, you can actually sit down and get on iNaturalist for the San Antonio area and help identify those things that need identification. And we are tentatively planning at least 1, maybe 2 identification parties somewhere in San Antonio. We're still working out those details. I'm sure that that Peter will be able to pass that information along once we nail down those locations and times. Should be a lot of fun, and hopefully it'll include pizza. All right, so I'm going to just review very quickly with the time we have about the iNaturalist webpage and then also the app, because there have been some changes. And a lot of people that use iNaturalist don't realize how valuable the web page is, because when you set up an iNaturalist account, you get your own web page, which is pretty cool. You can't say that about many apps out there, I don't think. So first of all, just to show you, this is what your web page will look like when you log in online with your username and your password. And across the top, there are several different tabs all the way over to here. And then there are several tabs that fall underneath your name on the page as well. So first, I want to just review very quickly a couple of these up here. First of all, if you click on the community, it's going to take you where you can go and search for other iNaturalist users. You can search for projects right here. You can look at journal posts. You can actually join a forum to ask questions. Very, very important and very valuable for some people that really dig into the details of it. Under more, you're going to find taxa info. Let's say you're a master naturalist, you've been asked to give a talk on something. You can go to taxa info on iNaturalist and find photographs that give copyright permission to use those photographs in presentations. I use them quite a bit in some of my presentations when I don't have the photographs that I need. Very, very valuable. And then down below, we have the help page. If you click on that, you'll see that. I'll show that to you in just a moment. It's really, really valuable. And then over in that corner, that far right corner, here's a button for uploading images, say from your camera. This is the email communication within iNaturalist. These are comments on your observations. And then this little drop down, if you click on it, it can take you back to your dashboard, or you can also do all of these things that your dashboard will allow you to do as well. And again, here's the iNaturalist help guide. Lots of tutorials, including video tutorials on how to do things, because we're not going to take all that time tonight to go through everything. This is a great website, and if you have questions, I encourage you to check it out, and I would bet that you will find most of the answers there. So back to our webpage real quickly. When we look at our part of the page specifically, we have a profile page. We have a tab where you can go look at all your observations, including editing them if you need to. You can look at IDs. You can go, this is the IDs that you have. And then if you click on identify, that will take you to a page where you can identify things. I may have a photograph of that here in just a moment, a slide of that in just a moment. And then the project page, which is real valuable. You can go and join projects. A lot of projects like the City Nature Challenge, you do not have to join. However, if you do join the City Nature Challenge, I believe you get notifications. So that's kind of cool. So those are all important things. So a few tips for using the apps, both the Apple and the Android. First of all, this is what your screens are going to look like. And they have changed within the last year. There's been some changes that are actually for the betterment of our use of iNaturalist. But when you want to take a picture or document something, of course, you click the camera over here on iNaturalist. Most of you know that. And you click the circle with the plus sign for the Android. And one of the new things, actually a couple of new things, is now you can download or you can upload things from your camera roll. You can also you can record and upload sounds, which is really valuable directly through iNaturalist. And of course, you can also document something that you didn't get a photo or a sound of. It won't become research grade, but at least you can put that on as something you witnessed and observed in a specific location. And of course, there's the traditional using the camera to document something on iNaturalist. So just to kind of, one thing about the iNaturalist camera and your regular camera on your phone is on your phone camera, you can edit your picture, which means you can crop it, especially when you're taking pictures of small objects. You can crop that there, and then of course through iNaturalist, upload it from your photo files. When you take a picture with iNaturalist camera, you cannot edit those photographs right there on the app. So sometimes it makes it a little more tricky because if the item is too small, the AI might not pick it up, and other people might miss it too, and maybe they're identifying the flower instead of the small insect that's in the middle of it. So that's something to keep in mind with using the cameras for iNaturalist. So first of all, let's do a camera roll just to kind of walk you through this very quickly. So when you click on this, it's going to take you to your camera roll. You're going to select an image that you want to add to iNaturalist. You then click on add, and there it is. It loads it right up there. Let's say you had one picture there that you wanted, but you had another one you wanted to add. All you would have to do is click that box with the plus sign. It would take you straight back here and you can select another photograph. Actually, it'd probably take you back to here, hit camera roll, go in here, select a different photograph, and it'll upload it. And then, of course, you go through the whole process that you do with identification. I'm not going to go into that detail for the most part because hopefully most of you know how to do that. You can ask questions about that at the end if you need to. Then we're going to look at the record sound. This is brand new, almost brand new for the iPhone. The Android's had it just a little bit longer, but we're thrilled to have this now. It used to be you had to have an app, a separate app, record, save it, and then upload it from there. Now you can do it directly. So when you open that up, this is the screen you're going to get. You click on the microphone, it's going to record. You can see the time right there. When you're done, you want to save that recording. And then the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a screen like this. It's going to say, what did you see? Well, you didn't necessarily see anything. You heard something. And as a result, you get this symbol right here. Now, let's say you got a recording and then you got a picture of it. You can add the picture right here. So you can have a picture and a recording. Now, here's the thing. If you only have a recording, it's not going to tell you what that recording was. So it's going to, when you click on this, just like you would for a photograph, you're going to get this screen, but instead of suggestions, it's going to say, look up a species by name. Well, the tricky part here is if you recorded the sound, it may be because you didn't know what it was. So if you know it was a bird or you're pretty sure it was a bird, you could start typing in bird there and it will pop up the choice of aves or birds. You can use that, select that as a placeholder so that people that are out there trying to help other people identify things can say, oh, there's somebody that's got a bird that they want to have identified by song. We'll go in and take a listen to it and see if we can't help them out. In this case, I happen to know it was a cardinal because sometimes I want to record sounds and put it on iNaturalist so I can go back and play it and remember what those songs sounded like. So I went ahead and populated, typed in cardinal, and it came up with this. And then when it goes in, when you actually upload it, it's going to give you a symbol instead of a photograph. So if it were an amphibian, it would probably be it looked like a little amphibian here instead of a bird. So, and an insect if it was an insect recording. Now, of course, when you observe your photograph, we're not going to go through all the details, but you can choose the camera. You can, again, put up multiple pictures if you choose to do that to help with your identification or other people's identification. When you click on what did you see on either one of these cameras, you're first going to get a generic choice, a kind of a general choice. In this case, it is a genus name, but it may also be a family name, or it may be an order depending on the organism. So it may not know the exact species. That's okay. If you don't know what the species is, but you're comfortable that it's within that right group, you can select that group. Let's say that you know what it is, It's going to give you a top 10 choice. Then you can go ahead and select that top 10 choice. In this case, of course, we did that. A couple of other things that are important for our purposes, to be a little selfish right now, for Texas nature trackers and other conservation organizations, it really boils down to accuracy. How close are you? How close is that observation to where it was really found? And for Texas Parks and Wildlife iNaturalist observations, we require at least no more than 500 meters for our consideration to get into the Texas Natural Diversity Database. And so you can see down here, there's 128, there's 6 over here, depending on the satellites. If you need to adjust that, you can do that right here on the app. You click on that and you either get a satellite image, you get a map, you can pinch that with a finger and a thumb, and you can pinpoint exactly where you want that observation to rest. Keep that in mind too. If you, let's say you go out to Mitchell Lake Audubon one of those 4 days or any day, and you're taking pictures of shorebirds or pelicans out quite a ways from you, remember that when you upload it into iNaturalist, you don't want the location to be where you're standing. You want it to be where the bird or other critter was. So you want to make that adjustment, and that you can do that right here pretty quickly and pretty simply while you're uploading it. Here, or mostly when you have birds far away, it's going to be a big camera, so you're going to be on your computer. And then of course there's geoprivacy. People are always concerned about that. It's set for open, which means everybody's going to see your observation. But you have the ability to protect the actual location should you choose to do that. And a lot of times with an endangered species or a threatened species, or if you're on your own private property and you just don't want to share the actual location data with the public, you can do that. You have that option. If you click on it, you have open, everybody sees the coordinates. You can also do obscured and private, which fully protects the, there's not even a pinpoint on the map under private coordinates. Here it's a big square with a random spot. Other people that can see it would be project curators that you have sent your observation to. When you do that, you're assuming that you're trusting them, or trusted users that you allow to see those. And then a real important for Texas Nature, for City Nature Challenge is that whether your photograph is something that is captive, cultivated, or wild. The default is that it's always wild. And of course, for our purposes, or TNT purposes, we're really trying to find things that are native plants and animals, as opposed to things growing in your garden that are not native. But for a City Nature Challenge, it's all things are open to you. So take a picture of anything. But if you take a picture of your roses in your front yard, you should go ahead and click this to cultivated, because it is cultivated. If it's a native plant that you've planted in your yard, it still would come in as cultivated. So keep that in mind, and it's just a good thing to kind of practice making sure that we're getting wild observations and that we're not misleading conservationists that are out there. Now, let me give you a couple of notes here. There's something called auto upload. So when you go on to iNaturalist, your phone apps are always going to be set automatically onto auto upload. And what that means is that when you get done with your observation and you hit share, or you check you hit the little check mark, what's going to happen is that observation is going to go ahead, and it takes 30 seconds, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, to go ahead and upload that image into your iNaturalist observations. However, when you're out bio-blitzing, like this 4-day period, let's say you get out and you go, I'm going to go out to this park and I'm going to take a picture of everything I want, and I don't want to go through the hassle of checking everything right now. What you can do on the Apple, on your iPhone, is you click on that little gear right there, and you'll notice down here it says auto upload right here. You can turn that off, and this also works if you're out and you have a very weak or no signal on your phone. Instead of it just sitting there and spinning, you can go ahead and turn this off. When you turn that off, every time you take an observation, it's going to say, what did you see? You can go ahead and have it suggest an ID. And then at the bottom, it's going to say save. You don't have to have it suggest an ID, and you can still just hit save, but you'll have to go back then later and then try to suggest the IDs and work through them each time, each of the observation. But this way, for the short term time that you're out in the field, you can maximize your photography, your sound recordings, and then work on them later back in the comfort of your home. Now, if you're doing this with a, and then the one thing I should tell you, one caveat, is remember to turn it back on when you're done so that it doesn't always do that unless that's what you want. So for the Android, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the little hamburger symbol up here, those 3 bars. And then down here, you find the gearbox. You're going to click on the gear. Then you're going to see that this is checked as an automatic. So you'll just uncheck it and you're off the auto upload on the Android as well. Again, that's an extra step process there on the Android. But again, remember to turn it back on when you're done. So a little bit when we're speaking of cameras, as I mentioned a minute ago, sometimes we've got big cameras with big lenses, we're taking pictures and we want to upload them from the camera. One of the things that is a challenge is when you've got lots of pictures. This is from a recent visit to Mitchell Lake Audubon Center. And I took a bunch of pictures of different water birds. I then took these and copied them all, the ones I wanted, and pasted them in to iNaturalist all at the same time, and now I can process them all at the same time. So one of the things I can do, there's a couple of things you can do as a group. One, and when you want to do that, you click on Select All right here. And if you want to add it to a project, say Birds of Texas or an Audubon project they have there, whatever it is, you can do all that at the same time, so you don't have to click on that each one of them to do that step. You can also tag them all if that's what you want to do. Or you can do some fields in it, create some fields, that kind of thing. So some of this you can just batch it, do it all at the same time. You can also go ahead and let's say you're not worried about you're in the Audubon Center and all these birds were taken in about the same place. You can then also just select one, open one of these up. Actually, what I would do is edit multiple locations. I'd click on this little symbol right here. It would open up the map. You would just click on that to turn the little symbol into a circle with 4 white dots with 1 white dot in the center. You can enlarge that as big as you want and then hit save. And it's going to give it a location and they're all done all at the same time. Then the only thing left really is to go through here and click on each of the species named by themselves, click that off. And then go ahead and select this or have to work through the species. And then all you have to do is hit submit and all of those then go in together. And you don't have to do it necessarily every step one by one. Now, perfection in iNaturalist, no way. iNaturalist is really, really good, but it is not perfection. It is not going to identify everything to species. It just isn't going to do it. I'd like to tell you I have a great explanation. There is no explanation other than nature is very diverse and some of the critters are so small you got to get under a microscope to count hairs. I just learned this last weekend. Some of those bee identifications, those tiny little bees, you're counting hairs on the bees to figure out what species they are. That's how precise it can be, and a photograph is not going to do that. So one of the examples here, these are of course black vultures, but just to show you that iNaturalist is not perfect. I don't know what the top recommendation was, but these were suggested recommendations under the top recommendation. You'll notice it shows a bison, boar, the bear. The bear absolutely disagrees. He does not believe that these are bears. So again, it shows that it is an imperfect system, but it's really, really good. And it's certainly better than anything we've ever had, including all those nature encyclopedias that are out of print as soon as you order them and get them in. So to kind of start to wrap up things a little bit, I want to show you the photography tips. This can be really valuable in terms of getting as many of your observations to research grade as possible. First of all, one of the things, devices I found a couple of years ago or a year or so ago was this thing called a Zenvo. It's a 15 power magnifier macro lens. You can see it right here. This is a wide angle up here. I usually unscrew this, don't use that at all. It's got a lanyard that comes with it. The clip is rubberized on the inside, so it doesn't slide around on your camera. And at 15 power magnification, which you can then blow up even more with your phone, just by pinching your phone screen another 5 times, you can get amazing detail with close-up photography using your phone and even video. So if you're in the market, this is about $40, $45, something like that. Well worth it. I think I've sold, I don't know how many I've sold by advertising this thing for this company that I have nothing to do with. But it's a fantastic device, truly. And I would encourage you, if you like taking pictures of small things, this is the deal. This is the one that'll do it for you on your phone. And then I also, this is a work issued camera. It's a Coolpix P900. It's got a zoom lens on it. It can take a lot of really good pictures from quite a long ways away without the expense of a $10 or $15 or $20,000 lens attached to the front of it. So I use this quite a bit in my line of work. And there are other brands, of course, that do equally as well. So getting to the actual photographs, when I take a picture of wildflowers, I typically take, if I don't know or I'm not sure what it is, I'm going to take multiple pictures. And one of the things when I take a picture like this, if I'm taking it on my camera, when I get it back to my computer, I'm gonna crop it so it gets as large so as I can get as much detail as possible. I'm going to take a picture of the side of the flowers so I can see the sepals, see the other arrangements of how the flowers are on there. That can be invaluable. My hand in there gives me a size reference if I have to measure something here to identify what it is specifically. I take a picture of the stem with the leaves. I take a picture of the whole plant. Very, very valuable. In terms of woody plants, I usually try to take a picture of the underside of the leaf because oftentimes it has hairs. You can see the venation much better. Make sure you get plenty of leaves on the stem, compound leaves versus simple leaves like these are, and then the arrangement of the leaves on the stem. Here's opposite, here are alternate. If you were using a taxonomic key to identify woody plants, this is the same steps you'd go through. And then again, other things that are on the plant, maybe it's the bark, maybe it's a tendril, maybe it's a thorn or a prickle, maybe it's fruit, or maybe it's the flowers of that particular plant. When you photograph invertebrates, patience is a virtue. Get as close as you can, be patient with it. With dragonflies and damselflies, they often fly off. Got huge compound eyes, but they like to perch in specific spots a lot of the time. So if you work your way up to that spot, you can end up getting a pretty nice photograph. Butterflies, just keep taking pictures of butterflies because some of them look very similar and yet they turn out to be different species. And then of course, if you can get the picture with butterflies of the bottom of the wing and the top of the wing, ideal. Not always necessary, sometimes it helps. And then don't forget about moths. There are more moth species by a long shot than there are butterflies. They're attracted to lights, they're hiding in the grass, they're all over the place, and there's some of them are just spectacular. So they're easy targets, especially with your iPhone. Can really get some nice pictures for identification purposes. And then with spiders, if you're taking pictures of spiders, take pictures of the dorsal surface, not the underside. This is where most of the pattern is for identification in field guides. And then with these kind of insects like the bumblebee, if you can get a shot of the side, a shot of the top, that'll help you aid with identification. And then you have these images right here. I've got lots of birds in this picture, at least 3 species. So if I put this on iNaturalist like this, the iNaturalist might try to do the ibises, and then it skips these other 2 species that are in here. So what I would do, and what I will do with this photograph, is actually crop it out. So I've got the shoveler right here, crop it so I've got the ibises right here, and then add another crop photo, the blue-winged teal. So I get 3 images out of this one photograph. And so that works out pretty well. You can do the same thing with wildflowers, with butterflies on the wildflowers, and target 2. Remember that sounds count. So birds singing, frogs and toads singing, both of those count. And then of course, animal tracks and even dead animals, roadkill counts as well. There are roadkill projects out there across the iNaturalist platform, can yield valuable data. So what else can you do? You can ID. That's what, if you've got field guides, you should be IDing. You can pull out all your field guides or one field guide that you have a particularly good skill at and focus on that. This is what it looks like. You can sort by species or by groups of species. You can pinpoint North America, you can pinpoint Texas, you can pinpoint Bexar County so that you can help other people identify what they have taken pictures of. And like right here, here's 2 ducks. So which one are you going to identify? They're trying to identify the northern pintail. Very good. So why help with IDs? There are a lot of people interested in nature. They need encouragement and help. It helps move more observations to research grade. It gives you another way to contribute to conservation efforts. It gives you the opportunity to sharpen your naturalist skills. And the other thing is, why not? Why wouldn't you do that if you're interested in nature? So why this matters to TPWD? First of all, over the last several years, if it weren't for iNaturalist, we would have somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 less observations of frogs and toads and snakes and turtles and all herps across the state of Texas. 6,000 less than we have now. And that has provided valuable data on the distribution of these often very secretive critters. And then we get other secretive critters. We all know this is a skunk by the white and black pattern. Research was done trying to figure out where they were across the state of Texas. Their results were very, very minor, minuscule, but at the same time, they reached out to community scientists trying to get them to submit things. They were able to get 24 new confirmed eastern spotted skunk records in 21 counties. They started with 10 counties and only got results in 4. Here we get 21 counties through community scientists, including new records in 6 counties. So lots and lots of valuable information can be gained through community science for conservation. Here's another example of how this can be important in terms of iNaturalist. This was at a commission meeting recently in the last year. The small game biologist was taking a look at the distribution points on iNaturalist for the gray and the fox squirrels, try and figure out if there was any possibility of expanding upon squirrel hunting opportunities for hunters out there in East Texas. And then, of course, we had the big storm last year. We're getting lots and lots of calls about animals being found dead. We created this project so that people had a place to document what had been killed by the storm, how many, that kind of thing. And it worked out really, really well, not for the wildlife, but for this project. So across the country, iNaturalist is used everywhere now, and I mean everywhere. It's in research papers all over, the peer-reviewed research papers everywhere. It's in books. I have a book on the wasps of Eastern North America. They used to figure out what the wasps were nectaring on. They used iNaturalist records for those species of wasp and documented what they were actually nectaring on. All of that information is very valuable. So here's an example of a southeastern United States put out by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a BioBlitz using iNaturalist. Here's an example for Oregon Department of Conservation. Again, here's using the iNaturalist app, trying to get community scientists engaged. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, same thing, iNaturalist app to help them document what's out there. California Department of Fish and Wildlife, same thing. These states, and just like Texas, are using iNaturalist. It's becoming a very valuable, very widespread tool. In fact, I was listening to a talk on the decline of insects today by a professor, I believe out of somewhere in Florida, which was a very mind-numbing sort of presentation to listen to and depressing in some ways. But one of the things he said at the end, he said in terms of engagement, in terms of getting people involved, especially young people, getting out there and documenting nature with iNaturalist was becoming a very powerful and very important conservation tool. So that's pretty cool. And here's another example here at the University of Florida. This may be the very place where that professor is talking from. And then here's a whole article right here, how to use iNaturalist. So again, iNaturalist is being used for a lot of things. So in conclusion, get out, begin documenting for conservation. You'll learn new things as well. You'll be contributing. And in terms, you have to ask your leaders of your chapter, but you can actually document some of that time. And I won't go into details of that because I'll just screw things up. But that can be very useful for your getting hours and beyond the hours. It's just the fact that you're contributing to the natural world. So again, remember, April 29th to May 2nd, be ready to go and get out there and enjoy nature and do something good for us. And there's our web page. Again, up here, you can join. It would say join up here. You can join it if you want to. And then you can follow along if there's any special guided nature walks and events going on in San Antonio that you can enjoy. And Peter, when I let you on here in just a second, I stopped talking. I know there's at least about 5 projects or opportunities for that. Here are some links if you want to take a screenshot, or you can get the recording and find out for more information on the City Nature Challenge. And the very last thing I'm going to mention, because it's coming up right away, is the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. It is a very, very important conservation tool that the federal government is looking to pass. It would be, you'll notice a few things, funding for Texas, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 billion a year to the state of Texas, or all states, with about 50 million to Texas, which is pretty amazing amount of money for conservation. It does not include tax increases to make that money available. It's local control, so it's administered by Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. to fund other state agencies, nonprofit, conservation organizations. Texas Parks and Wildlife is not keeping all the money to itself. It's going to create jobs down the line. It's good for outdoor recreation. It's a desperate need. I mean, the reality is, we all know the reality that plants and animals across the globe are declining, many of them, not all, but many. And if we don't take steps now, we're going to lose entire groups of species over the next 10 to 20, maybe 30 years, if things continue the way they are. And just to kind of give you an idea, it has 32 Senate co-sponsors from both parties, 166 House of Representative co-sponsors, and that's the trick, is to get as many of those as you can. It's been passed out of committee in both the House and Senate as of a few days ago. Final votes are going to be held on the floor of both houses by Memorial Day. And now is the time to contact your local congressman, your 2 senators, and let them know that you support this. What I have learned through this process is that only 10 phone calls to one of these folks' offices will get them to pay attention. That's all it takes. If you care about conservation, if you care about the future of wildlife and plant life in the state of Texas for not only you, but your future generations, this is a game changer. There's nobody that disagrees with the fact that this is a game changer for conservation of all species, and not just our game and fish species that we typically hunt or fish for. Anyway, I'll wrap it up now. There's my iNaturalist username. Tanya's was right here. My email address is right here if you have any questions. And of course, as we get closer to the event, hopefully you'll hear more and more about this and you'll choose to participate. We really encourage you to do that. And with that, I will stop sharing, Peter. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those, or maybe together we can answer them as well. So.
Okay, I didn't see any questions on the chat, but once again, before you stop sharing, I was going to ask you to talk about the journal within the project, and I'll put the link again out there on the chat.
Okay.
And finally, to spread the word, I will also put the link to, if you need to spread it among your work area, your school, your whatever. There's a good link with all the logos and flyers and a video, just a generic video about City Nature Challenge if people don't know about it. So look at that. But go ahead, can you talk about the journal? There wasn't any questions in the chat room, but I have a couple that I wrote down.
Okay.
You know, the journal, you did touch on it.
Well, I tell you what, you've done more with that journal than I have. Why don't you talk about it? You're more intelligent when it comes to that.
Well, the journal. So, like Craig said, you know, we want everybody to join the project. It's not necessary to participate, but it'll be great. Let me see if I could open it up and share mine. And when you all join that, y'all become members. And I could see the members just jumped a little bit. That means y'all are listening. That's great. But on there, Craig did mention that there were nature walks and so forth. I am posting there, and I'll share. Let me just move it to screen 1. Okay, can everybody see that?
It's coming up. It's coming up. There it is. You got it.
Okay. Yeah. So here in the journal, as you become a member here, you'll also get notes about what's going on, and I'm hoping to put things in there. City Nature Challenge, you know, you don't have to be at these locations. You could definitely do it from a local park near you. But if you want to participate, I know Judith is looking for Master Naturalists, and it's on our calendar to be at the Toyota on April 29th from 8 to 1. And so there's a whole litany of, there were 6 of them. I think there's going to be 7 coming up. So look at these. Maybe these are near your where you live, less travel, or you just want to participate in a group effort in bio-blitzing together. Some of them have some activities, scavenger hunts. So if you could want to bring your kids or to that, that's great. Visiting identification tables and so forth. So bee caves is just having they're extended their hours. And I want to say also not Medina, Mitchell Lake has extended their hours. I think they normally close around 3 o'clock. They extended it to 4:30. So that's just another viewing place to go look to get a lot of identifications.
And Peter, that's where we'll put the identification party information too. Correct?
Yes. So I'll be putting that as soon as I get confirmation on that. I did put on the chat. There's 2 identification parties already. We just need to button them down. One is called the identification that's after City Nature Challenge observation period. We're going to wait 2 days, and we'll have our first one May 4th, and we'll call it May the 4th be with you identification party. So we'll see if San Antonio Foundation can provide the pizza. And then
Nice.
May 5th, we're calling that Cinco de Mayo identification party. And that will be at Friedrich. And I posted those on the chat room.
Fantastic.
So,
I'll be there. I'll be there.
At the Friedrich or both?
I may be at both of them because
Okay.
I love doing that. I may have
Yeah.
to bring rent a van to bring my field guides, but I'll be there.
Right. So one of the big things also in the identification party, it's all, Craig, you could probably explain this a lot better than I can, but we're all going to gather around and hopefully with our books and ID and pizza and probably, start identifying things. Another thing that did come up in yesterday's International City Nature Challenge meeting was we also need to identify people that are putting down cultivated stuff or, those need to be pushed away and say, hey, those are never going to be research grade if it's cultivated or captive. If they take a picture of their hat or their cat or dog or horse or so forth. So that's also part of the identification is cleaning those out. We don't want to see those because we don't get identification points on those. But other than that, I'll give it back to you. I didn't see any other chat questions.
There was one question about how iNaturalist handles the possibility of duplicate observations. So that's inevitably gonna happen. When we do our trainings and bio blitzes, people often take multiple pictures, and that's okay because keep in mind this. So each of us individually is trying to learn something, and each of us is trying to build our own library of observations. And so if there's only one red bud tree there and it's in flower and 5 people want to take a picture of it, yes, it's going to count as 5 observations because 5 different people took a picture. But if somebody's using that data, they're going to be able to look at the locational data and sort that out. iNaturalist doesn't sort it out. It's a kind of brings all of them in, including those non-natives and things like that. So the idea is that it becomes an individual thing at that level. And again, if it's something that somebody wants to know where all the red bud trees are, they can look at that data, they can look at the distribution and be able to figure out that, hey, that's one tree, not 5 different trees potentially. So that's something to keep in mind that will happen, and it's okay. It's absolutely okay. This is an event that is really, I think, trying to get folks outside and enjoying nature at a beautiful time of the year, and taking pictures of nature and learning about nature. And it's a great way to build community. I like the comment Lisa mentioned, the going to neighborhood school or church campus. And that's one of the things I think it has the potential for. She mentioned native plants in gardens. Those may not, because if you check them off as even though they're native as cultivated, they are still valuable. And the reason I say that is I could see a time where somebody would want to know, hey, what native plants are people actually planting? So being able to do a search for those plants and maybe even searching for things that aren't necessarily a research grade, to go the opposite way of what we normally think, can be really valuable. So if I'm wanting to start a native wildflower business or something like that, I may want to figure out what are people using. I know I have my own personal project at my house, and about 100 of my observations, probably more, are the native plants that I've planted in my yard. So they're not research grade. Nobody ever looks at them. But for me, it allows me to A, document that they're flowering, and B, by documenting when they're flowering, I get a better understanding of their phenology year to year. Are they blooming a week earlier this year? We always say, boy, it sure seems late for this plant or this plant this year, or the birds are returning late. Well, we think that in our head, but do we really know that? And so iNaturalist can build kind of a phenology library, if you will, if you stick with that kind of thing. And that's one of the intents of my project is to create that phenology. So it can be used in so many different ways. I see something else, found things growing in places where the lawnmowers couldn't reach around. Yes, that's exactly right too. That's exactly, where I grew up in Iowa, one of the greatest places to go for native plants was cemeteries, because they didn't mow all the corners, and that's where the wildflowers grew because everything else was gone. So it's interesting where you can find native plants growing.
That's so true. My favorite in Floresville Cemetery, they'd have that problem. I found a lot of natives in that cemetery. So
Yep.
yes, maintenance guys don't get off their lawnmowers. That's good news for native plants.
That's right. Hey, Judith, so creating projects for a specific site, that's a great question. So basically, anybody can create a project. There are getting to be so many projects on iNaturalist that I know that's becoming a concern for the administrators of it. However, if you're going to create a project, the first step, just to kind of minimize that overlap, is to go on and search projects to see if there's already a project that might fit your needs for that location. So that'd be step number one. If there isn't, then the second thing you have to do is see if there is a place, a boundary for that location. And you could do that by searching for places on iNaturalist. And Judith, you and I can do a Teams call tomorrow. I'm in my office all day unless you're tied up. We can do a team call in the next few days, and I can actually walk you through this process. But you'd go and look for places, you'd type in that destination. If there's no place, then you have to create a place. And it used to be you could create a place on iNaturalist. You don't have that capacity anymore. So you have to create a KML file of the place on Google Earth, save that, and then go into iNaturalist and create your place and upload the KML. This sounds way more difficult than it actually is. It's about a 3-minute process. And then you can create your project and upload that place. Okay. So that is a lot of words for a fairly simple process that I can walk you through at some point if you'd like me to do that.
Yeah. And real quick, Judith, if you're doing Toyota does have a place already.
Right.
You just don't have a BioBlitz. I don't know if that was your target. Go ahead.
The other thing, since they already have a place, you could actually, once you're done, you don't even have to create the project if you don't want to. You can actually go to their data, their project, and do a search, a filter by date. And so you could actually filter out all the observations except for that time frame where you are out there BioBlitzing, and get a printout of all of the observations during that time. If you choose to do it that way, you could do that too.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, there says, any tips on speeding up the process from camera roll to iNat to avoid that to scroll way down and work backwards each time? Say you have a long day's observations on roll without uploads, edits, crops along the way. There may be no workaround, but I just want to make sure I'm not skipping some easy step here. So you're using, Mike, are you using, from a camera roll? Okay. Are you using the iPhone to build your camera roll? Is that what we're saying? Yes. Okay. Peter,
what
really
I do is
go ahead.
Go sort first. I kind of sort mine and before I upload. I'm taking that you're doing a mass upload, so I sort my data first and how I want it to come up, and then I hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, if you have a lot, I make sure that they're all together and make sure that everything that I want, I'm not sending anything that I don't want in there. So I've cleaned the clutter before it goes up, if that makes sense. And that's sorting and even sometimes renumbering them if I have to. So.
And Mike, you can send an email to me and I can, here, let me put my email in here. And if you want to email me those questions, maybe we can have a phone call and cover that in more detail so we can answer it properly for you here. My email is.
All right. This was a great session, I hope, for everybody. And we learned a little bit more about iNaturals. Every time I'm listen, I learn a little bit more. There's a lot to learn from it. And hopefully everybody will be out there. And last year, Craig, you gave a goal of how many? I know you said 10 by everybody earlier, but that
10?
wasn't your
Yeah.
original goal for all the folks. What was your goal? And I know if
My
that was
personal goal?
no. It was
Oh.
you told everybody go out and do
10. I want everybody,
no.
if everybody on this call does 10,
Okay,
that's
well,
that's 460.
that's better than last year. You gave us 600 to do.
Well, yeah, that's true. We did
And
overstretch. I didn't. You almost made it, didn't you?
no, I did. I think I did.
You did make it. I failed miserably. I'm going for 750 this year.
And one shout out.
Personally.
Yeah, one shout out to the top observer. I know he wasn't on the call, but he was a master naturalist, and that is Jerry Morrissey. If y'all know Jerry Morrissey, he goes out, and one of the big things that he does is he does bugs and bugs. He loves and is great on flora. So flora and bugs. There's more bugs out there to find. And one thing next year, or if somebody out there wants to do a moth night, let me know. I'd love to have a moth night in San Antonio area. I don't think we had our meeting. I think that would be great to have a moth night. I know I'm going to have one here at my house, middle of the night, but that's here. But I like to get more participation at a park or somewhere public. All right. With that said, Craig, thank you for giving the presentation. I appreciate everybody. Y'all have a great night and be safe out there.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Peter.
Craig.
Appreciate it, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Appreciate you saving the day, man.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have a plan B after this.
I hope everything's okay with Amanda.
I do too.
Yeah. All right. I know she's
Peter,
working.
thank you, Craig.
I didn't get who said that, but thank you.
Hayek did,
Oh, okay. I know you. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
And it didn't look like y'all missed a beat tonight. It was very nice.
Well, the good news is I had recommended Craig. So and me and Craig have been working together, so it worked out great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, Peter.
All right. Thank you. Bye.